Thank you, Marcus, and thank you for everyone for allowing us to be with you here tonight. This is kind of like coming home because I grew up pretty well in the pork industry with my husband's family. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a fifth-generation farmer from Shelby County. I farm with my husband, Kevin, and his family up near Clarence. We raise hogs, a few cows, some corn, and some soybeans on our family farm. Our team at the Missouri Department of Agriculture has been working hard to make sure that we make you proud and that we're representing your needs every single day in everything that we do. Today with me, I have several of my key staff with me. You saw Dr. Steve Struberg here today and a lot of his team throughout the day of meetings. He wanted to make sure that he was available to talk with you, to make sure that we answered any questions that you have. Dr. Struberg, would you stand up, please? Dr. Struberg has almost been with the department for a year. His anniversary will be coming up, I think, probably in April, if I remember right. And he's had a very busy year. He tackled some really tough issues in this first year, and he's put in a lot of time to make sure that your interests are well represented. Also with me, I have my Deputy Director, Chris Klinklin. Chris, please stand. So Chris has been at the department for quite a few years, but just recently joined me as my deputy director, and this month marks his one-year anniversary. And so he truly has been an asset for all of you in this room, making sure that your interests are well represented. I also have with me Davin Altoff, who is our Ag Business Development Division Director. And when I pulled Chris Klinklin up from the Grain Division, that allowed us to appoint Ken Henderson as our new Grain and Warehousing Division Director. Liz Roberts has a very important role at the department, one that most people wouldn't think about, but she's in charge of managing all of the grants that we get from USDA, FDA, EPA, whoever it might be. So she makes sure that we get all the dollars that are available for the state to help farmers like you and I every single day. Thank you, Liz. Sammy Jo Freeman helps us with the voice of agriculture at the department. She and Sarah Gellner work really hard on social media, press releases, anything that makes sure we're representing you in a very favorable fashion. So thank you, Sammy, for what you do. And Emily Leroy is our legislative liaison, so she works with a lot of the legislators answering questions they might have about the department, constituent concerns that come into your state rep or your state senator. Many of those go to Emily, and she chases down the answers for your representative as well. And then last but not least, we have Jill Howerton Wood, who is no stranger to this group either. She is the executive director of MASBDA. And so the study that you heard Lieutenant Governor Kehoe talk about, the food and beverage study, her board of directors funded that study. And they do a lot of things to help the rural community, beginning farmer loans, just a lot to make sure that we help that next generation get into agriculture. And then also we have someone who you guys probably know very well, and that is Jim Anderson with the Wine and Grape Board. He's the fun arm of the department, so lots of people like to see Jim. So Jim, thank you for being here this evening. So as you know, when I came to the department, I spent a lot of time listening to people like you and hearing your concerns and what we could do better. And the one thing we heard over and over was agriculture's doing pretty good, but we could do more. And so that we developed our more strategic initiative with the 4 pillars. And so the progress that we have made, I wanted to give you a quick update. So under our Feed More pillar, through the help of Missouri Farmers Care, Missouri Pork, all of the agriculture organizations, we have provided 6.5 million meals to families in need in the state of Missouri. And a lot of that happened this last November with the Hams Across America. And there was a lot of pork that was donated to the 6 regional food banks right here in the state of Missouri. And the day that we were there, we actually toured the food bank. And I'll never forget, Diane and I were walking through there with Sammy Jo, and we realized that Beyond Meat made lots of donations to the food banks. So I was really proud to know that we were getting some pork into those food banks so that those families in need actually had protein that came from an animal that they could feed to their growing children. That was a surprise to me to know that was one of the companies that was donating food. So I'm proud of everyone in this room for making that possible through the Hams Across America. Through our Reach More pillar, we've reached over 6 million people on social media to share the story of what you do every single day to make sure that Missourians and other people across this great nation have safe and affordable food. Through our Connect More pillar, it's all about making sure our rural communities are not left behind and that we have access to high-speed and affordable internet. I'm happy to say that as of today, we have received over $300 million in federal funding, and that's not something that the Department of Agriculture can take all of the credit for. That was a true partnership through the Missouri legislature, our senators like Senator Bernskoetter, our representatives in the back of the room, but also through our governor and our U.S. Congressional leaders like Senator Blunt and our U.S. Senator Hawley and all of the congressional delegation out in Missouri. They made this a true priority to make sure that Missouri had a seat at the table to get some of these funds. So we're really excited to see those federal dollars coming into our rural communities. Our Empower More pillar, we propose to reduce 40% of our proposed rules for elimination or for amendment. And we're also working under this pillar to address the challenges that we had in 2019 with flood. So we are a part of the Flood Recovery Advisory Working Group at the department, working with the Department of Natural Resources to make sure that your voices are heard for those of you who were in those flooded areas. And as always, we continue to work on trade. This last year I was in Mexico as well as the United Kingdom working on trade issues to make sure that Missouri has access to fair and free trade. Secure pork supply, I know you guys have heard a lot about that this meeting, and African swine fever. Dr. Struberg, Dr. Rinkemeyer, and their team have been working diligently through this last year to make sure that if that terrible disease should hit the United States, that you're prepared. And so we want to make sure that it doesn't come to the United States. The first thing we want to do is keep it out. But if it does end up in the United States, we want to make sure that you're prepared on your farms. We know that biosecurity is of utmost importance to you. And we also want to make sure that we are in communication with you. So having that secure pork supply plan is going to help you if we should have ASF hit in Missouri or in the United States. Farms that have that secure pork supply plan in place are going to be allowed to have movements if they're not contaminated with ASF faster than anyone else. So when you talk with your veterinarian the next time, ask them what you need to do to get prepared to have your secure pork supply plan in place, because now is the time for all of us to be working on it. I'm a farmer, so I get how busy you guys are. I understand that the last thing you want to do is sit down and try and do a packet of paperwork, and we've talked about that at the department many times. But we truly want to be a partner in this, and we don't want you having to worry about these plans in the event of a crisis when you're already dealing with tough decisions. So anything that we can do to help you to prepare for that is what we want to do. So if you want more help on this, work with your veterinarian or visit securepork.org to get started. The last thing I want to mention is we want to hear from you. So as many of you know, we did not have a governor's conference on agriculture this year. Instead, we did our Reach More tour, which is why I brought my entire team here tonight, because I want you to know who your leadership is at the Department of Ag and who you can call on in the event of a tragedy or just needing some help. So what we want to know from you is we're going to have a governor's conference on ag. It's going to be November of 2020. And we want to know what will make it worth your time to leave your farm for a day and a half to come to another conference. What do you want to hear about? What's of interest to you? The other thing that we want to know is, how are we doing? Are we giving you the tools that you need to be successful? Are we getting out of your way? Or do you need to hear more from us? And so you can do that by going to agriculture.mo.gov and submit that survey to us and let us hear from you, because we are your Department of Agriculture and we can only be as good as you tell us that you need us to be. So if we're not meeting your needs, we want to hear from you. Don't be afraid to give us that candid feedback, because we are your Department of Agriculture. And as always, thank you guys for being here. I know there are many people who have made a lot of sacrifices to be at this meeting today. You have people at home taking care of your livestock. You have people that are going to be weaning for you tomorrow, because I know Wednesday is weaning day for a lot of us. And I just appreciate you guys making it a priority to be here, because you are the true leaders of agriculture, and it's important for each one of you to show up and to make sure your voice is heard. So thank you guys for that and for being here. And at this time, I have the great honor of introducing who our 2009 Leopold Conservation Award winners are. This year, it's going to a pork producer, someone who many of you know. It's not a stranger to this group at all. The Leopold Conservation Award was named after renowned conservationist Aldo Leopold. The award is presented by the Missouri Farmers Care, the Sand County Foundation, the Missouri Soybean Merchandising Council, and the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service. This year's 2009 winner goes to the Brinker Farms. Brinker Farm is operated by Kenny and Susan Brinker. They are a farrow-to-finish operation that also processes and markets Brinker Farms pork directly to consumers. And for those of us who are involved in the pork industry, we know what a big challenge that is to do direct marketing to consumers. And this is something that Kenny and his family have tackled head on. The farm demonstrates how modern pork and row crop farms can serve our soil, our water, and our air. From their building construction to their manure management to their conservation practices and their soil health management. The Brinker Farms are a great example for all of us in the room. They are one of the nation's first farm families who adopted the National Pork Board's Comprehensive Nutrient Management Plan. And for all of us in the room who have went through that process, we know that that is a very daunting task to go through, but it's one that has paid dividends for all of our family farms. At this time, I would like for you to direct your attention to the screens to learn more about Kenny and his family.
We started as a family generations ago, back in the 1830s when our family came from Germany. And our family, my generation, lived and farmed down by Washington, Missouri, which is about 50 miles west of St. Louis. Urban encroachment kind of claimed our farm. It was right on the city limits of Washington. So we found this piece of property up here in Callaway County and purchased it back in 1994. When we first bought the farm, it was very, very depleted. We were actually told by some of the locals that they weren't interested in the farm for purchasing it because they thought it was pretty well ruined. So we immediately started a lot of conservation practices on the farm, started putting a hog facility on the farm, and moved our families up here in 1998.
Since then, we increased the row crop acres and doubled up the sow operation once again to where we're currently farming about 4,200 acres, and we have about 2,800 sows that we owned all the way from farrow to finish.
Our dad played a big part in us being a steward of the land. He's the one who, started about 30 years ago, was whenever they started doing a no-till practice in Washington, Missouri. And we moved that up here, that same practice up here to where we're at now.
We started doing a lot of our own conservation work as far as terraces and waterways and tile, but it still wasn't quite enough to knock out all the erosion. In the past 5 years, we switched over to cover crop in an effort to help conserve the soil and build up our soil health and maintain the soil structure to boost our yields, because the soils in our area are very prone to erosion and drought. So anything we can do to help increase the soil structure and the water holding capabilities is really in our favor. We also take the manure from our hog operation, and we have it in a lagoon, and we pump it through 3 center pivots, and we use that fertilizer on our corn and bean ground. It's kind of a turnkey operation where we use the manure to raise a crop that we then feed to the hogs, and then the manure that comes from those hogs we use as fertilizer to grow our next crop. So when it comes to a full circle operation, it fits the bill quite well.
Our family's been raising hogs for a long time. We originally started out with hogs out on open ground in little A houses. Hogs are really rough on the ground. Whenever you have them out on ground, they'll root up the ground. The water runs down into the ditch, and you have a lot of pollution that way. So with these modern buildings, it allows us to control the manure. It's a lot nicer environment for the pigs. We can keep it the temperature that they like. Every change and update that we've done has been for the improvement of the life of the hog, so that they can have a more comfortable environment and better for the environment as well.
These practices that we implemented really help our bottom line, and it really helps cut down on the cost of production, as well as it's really been helping us increase our yields. From time to time, we have people ask us how we do our practices, stuff like that, and we're always very, as most farmers are, very open to help other farmers.
Multiple occasions we've had groups from other countries come out to our farm to see how we do some of our practices. And that's usually set up through NRCS or similar groups like that have the contacts with those people. And they'll come out to see what sort of sustainable farming practices we're doing here in the United States to try to take back to their countries. Every system is different, so they might not be able to employ our exact practices in their situation, but they may be able to learn a little bit of how we do things so they can experiment in their own systems to see what works for them.
Our passion for farming probably is just what you call bred into us. Our family's farmed for the last 150 to 200 years. And it's just always something I grew up with and I really love to do.
Ever since I was little, I always thought I was following my dad around and helping, when in turn it turns out I was probably just getting in the way. But he was always willing and eager to have me come along with him. And that just instilled a love for farming in me that I still own to this day.
We're very blessed. We've got all of our children that came back in our family and farm with us now. So whenever we do anything, it's always with family. The kids will want to come out and ride in the tractor cab. They'll want to ride in the sprayer. They'll want to ride in the grain cart. And it's just ability to work together as family and do something. And the idea that we're trying to build up our natural resources and preserve everything for the next generation, for generations to come.
So as a fellow farmer, I am really proud of the Brinker family and their accomplishments, and it's my honor to welcome them to the stage tonight to receive the Leopold Conservation Award. So Kenny, Susan, would you and your family please join us up here on stage?
We'd like to thank everybody for my family that for this award. It's really appreciated by our family to be recognized in this fashion, and we certainly like to thank all the sponsors that help present and support this award each year. As you can tell by the film, a lot of that's not staged about our kids being out there in the evenings and stuff like that. Susan's job all the time and during harvest season is she always brings the food out in the field, and of course the grandkids all want to come along. And my son Travis's little boy is 3 years old. You can take him through about any John Deere parking lot around Mexico or up at 80 Seidenstrickers, and he can pretty well tell you what every piece of machinery is out there and what it's used for. And also in the film, you might have noticed we did have a group of visitors. We welcome those groups to come in. The group that was here, I asked my son a while ago to remind me what the name of the country was, but when we got the call from the NRCS to ask if we host them, I asked, okay, where are they from? And they said, well, I can't pronounce it, but it's east of Russia and north of Iraq. And so the group came out, and we have to always do these groups through interpreters. And when they came into our lunchroom where we normally start out with these tours, I was just going to make conversation. I asked them, I said, how many of you folks raise hogs? And the interpreter said, well, these are all Muslims. So we moved right on to the crop side with them. But we did have different groups out during the year. We had, I think, this year the Japanese, the Chinese, the Danish come out each year for an annual visit, and then we had this group that I can't pronounce. Sometimes you run into cultural issues like that when you talk to people from other countries, but sometimes you'll get a group that you'll understand when you speak with them. Some things pass all international boundaries and all cultural differences. When we had the Japanese out this summer, they also had to have an interpreter along. And as we were going through the day, Cody went ahead and got one of our tractors and planters out of the shed and opened it up, folded it out so they could see how it all worked. Being from Japan, this was impressive to them because they farm in a lot smaller scales. So while the interpreter was working with Cody and explained to that, one of the older, I shouldn't say older, he's probably about my age, gentleman in the group asked on that field right next to our house. He could speak enough English we could communicate.
why is it that part of that rye is terminated earlier and part of it's about a foot or two high and it's just dying now? And I said, well, you got to understand that L-shaped piece around our house is right where our house is at, and the day Travis was spraying it, the wind was coming the wrong way, and my wife's got a garden right there alongside between the field and the house. And he said, oh, she the boss? And I said, isn't it that way everywhere? And he goes, ah, yeah. So some things do transcend the international boundaries and culture, and same the world over. But I would like once again to thank everybody for the award we received. I'd especially like to thank Carrie wherever she's at. Carrie came out and Ashley did a lot with it. And if it's ever can be said, somebody managed to make something, a silk purse out of a sow's ear, I really think Ashley did it with that film. So thanks everybody very much.